I'm Susanna Smith, a librarian at Georgia Highlands College. Welcome to Copyright and Creative Commons, Understanding Copyright Issues in the Classroom. This is part 2, Fair Use, Copyright in your face-to-face class. The first thing we should ask is, what is fair use? We hear the term all the time, but can you actually describe what it is? The fancy legal definition is, fair use is the doctrine that brief excerpts of copyright material may, under certain circumstances, be quoted verbatim for purposes such as criticism, news reporting, teaching, and research, without the need for permission from or payment to the copyright holder. Fair use was first identified during an 1841 court case. An author had put together a collection of George Washington's letters, and he sued another author who used most of his content in toto. And that is when the courts defined fair use as justifiable use of original materials. Ultimately, it was codified in the 1976 revision of the U.S. Copyright Act. And this is when classroom guidelines on fair use were established, and this is where academic fair use was really born. So how do you identify fair use? Well, that's the big question, isn't it? It's not an easy 1, 2, 3 and done. You really have to kind of dig into the material that you're wanting to use, and you have to dig into how are you planning on using the material. There are 4 main areas that you ask yourself about. The first is purpose. What is the purpose and character of your use? How are you going to use it? The courts look at things like, is it an educational institution? It's going to look at, are you transforming the work into something new? Transformative work is actually a good thing if you want to claim fair use. So think about, how do you want to use the work? The second is nature. What is the nature of the copyrighted work? Ultimately, the more creative something is, the less likely you'll be able to claim fair use. If it's a work of history citing facts, you could use that pretty much without question. If it's a novel, then you're going to have to ask yourself some other questions. Amount. How much are you going to use? How substantial of a piece of the work are you going to use? Less is better. But not only is less better, think about what part are you using. If you're using a poem, for example, if you take the most important 2 stanzas of the poem, the heart of the poem, you'll be less likely to claim fair use because you're using the most important part of that work. And finally, effect. It's all about money. Is your use of this material going to cause the creator to lose money because you're using it without paying? That counts for anything. So if you're using textbook materials and your students aren't paying for the textbook, then that's a negative impact on the market, and you have to take that into account. Before we're done, I do want to talk about one more very important thing that always comes up every semester when we're talking about fair use. It's fair use in the films question. Can I show films in my class? Well, according to fair use, yes, you can show a full-length film in your face-to-face class, but you have to meet certain conditions, and those are laid out very specifically. The film has to be integral to the course content. That means it can't just be some random film that you're showing to entertain the students while you're going to be at a conference. It has to be important to your course. It has to be shown in your classroom during your class. All the attendees have to be registered for the class. And finally, you have to be using a legally obtained copy. What if you want to show a film to a group of students during a special event? Fair use never applies to the public performance of a film. This includes, yes, those student events that you want to host and you want to say, I'm just inviting students, so it should be okay, right? No, it's not okay. If you don't have public performance rights, you cannot show a film to a group of students unless it's in a class. In fact, You can't even show it in your classroom if you've invited other people who aren't enrolled in the class to attend. So let's talk a little bit more about public performance. Public performance rights are typically granted by a distributor, a filmmaker, or a movie studio. And there are plenty of licensing companies you can contact to secure those rights. If there's something you're really passionate about and you really want to show a film to a group outside of the classroom, that would be the next way to go. Once you do that, you have to abide by the contract. So if the contract says you can only show it once, then only show it once. Now, library plug, we do have resources that are licensed for public performance. We also have some that are not licensed for public performance, but they are licensed for streaming performance. So if you're not sure how you can use library resources, ask. We're happy to help you with that. So that's it on fair use. It seems like a really short video, and it is, because what you really need to do is to find the link on the guide that you're looking at that this video is embedded in, and find the fair use checklist. Bring it up, look at it, and then use that as an evaluation tool for materials that you'd like to use in the classroom. The best way to understand fair use is to actually apply it. So I hope you stick around. Part 3 is coming up. Part 3 is on the TEACH Act, and that is using materials in your online classes. And this is a fairly new creation by our lawyers and legal people up in Washington. So I hope you stick around for that. I think it'll be interesting.